Hey, 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 hey! This is Business Pants.
I like that. I like that a
Matt
lot.
McCarty. I'm Damian Rollis. It's Thursday, but it feels like a Friday because we only do shows 4 times a week, Monday through Thursday. And I'm cold and hungry. This is Free Float Media. What's up, Matt?
I'm not cold or hungry. It is
Oh.
Free Float Media. I mean, you should intro every show that way, though.
I might. It's a work in progress.
I should say
you know?
we're for those who are watching, and
Yeah.
by those who are watching, I mean the no one who's watching. We are
Come on.
live on Twitch
Oh.
again. We were off Twitch
Yeah.
for like 12 minutes because Twitch deactivated our account for reasons that are unfathomable, and now we're reactivated. So we're back.
Can I just tell people listening at home on their podcast, which is great. I support that. This live video show that we do is amazing. Matt is very handsome. He has a tie on. Our slideshow projected behind us is impeccable, beautiful. Really, I mean, there's everything. Everything is roses. Just watch us.
There's
ahead.
visuals. There's a lot going on. There's a lot going on.
All right. Today, November 7th, 2019, this is our weekly wash show. Let's get to it.
What do we got on our agenda today?
I was waiting for the heart. Where the hell?
No,
Where's the heart?
this is the agenda music.
Oh, okay. All right. Let's jump into our dirty pile of clothes and get to our weekly wash. Our two biggest stories this week are part of our apology tour, where it's the tale of two corporate giants, where one company fired its CEO for having a consensual relationship. That would be you, McDonald's, but don't do a victory lap just yet. While the other company, please stand up, Boeing, praised and defended its CEO for being at the helm during multiple plane crash tragedies that happened over 6 months apart that each killed over 150 people for the same problem. So where are we at the end of the week? I'll tell you just to wrap up the week. As far as McDonald's goes, please don't buy all the praise, as the company's poor handling of sexual harassment allegations has been in the news. As we pointed out here, McDonald's was called out in a book that covered the Me Too movement and the Harvey Weinstein scandal. McDonald's workers have filed more than 50 complaints with the EEOC here in the United States.
Wait a second.
Yeah.
I'm going to interrupt you.
Sure.
Are you doing the agenda? Or are you already in the story?
Oh, I'm well into the story. I don't know what I'm in the weekly wash, baby.
Yeah, we're supposed to do the agenda. What's on our agenda today?
Oh, you want me to go backwards
You
now?
didn't even do the agenda.
You're being a little micromanaging. I messed up. I screwed up the agenda. If you want to do the agenda and cut me off, you.
I don't know. We're doing the weekly wash. We've got stories about the big gig.
Yeah.
We got another mailbag. Somebody actually wrote us more questions.
Yeah.
And then we've got a bunch of biz nuggets. And then I'm going to make something of my life.
All right.
That's what
I made a
got.
mistake. All right. Am I fired? I mean, I'm half the company,
Wow.
so you can't fire me.
We've only been doing this. We're only.
Yeah.
It's hard to find good help.
I got to remind myself. Note to Damien. Read the friggin' agenda. All right. Let's get back to McDonald's.
Now.
All right. I'm just saying this to McDonald's. I'm gonna wrap it up. Don't applaud yourself for firing the CEO. See this as an opportunity. Deal with your sexual harassment issues. I took a quick peek at your website. I can see that less than 17% of your corporate leadership is comprised of women. It looks like none of your top 5 named executive officers are women. So, yeah, do something, McDonald's. That's it. That's all I got. I'll let you talk in a second, but let me wrap up with Boeing, where CEO Dennis Muilenburg stays on his lame apology tour, and now he's saying that he will forgo, quote, tens of millions of dollars. But he also said, it's not about my money. But then he said that he's foregoing his bonuses to send a message of responsibility. So, all right, Dennis, are you listening? It's called a bonus, okay? It's not guaranteed pay. It's a bonus for doing a good job. You didn't do a good job, so no bonus. So stop pretending that you're sacrificing something, okay? I'm really, this is ridiculous.
Can we? So I think we need.
Bonus.
I think we need a primer here because the way bonuses get paid, like when we worked at financial giants,
We did, yeah.
we got paid bonuses at the end of the year
For what?
for like based on some performance metrics that
Thank
inevitably changed every single year,
Well, okay, but that's, yeah,
right?
that's true.
Like the performance metrics were, is it fair to say make believe?
Yeah, and typically they are, yes.
Okay, so but CEOs also have performance metrics, none of which are the same CEO to CEO, right?
No.
Like it all depends on what the board determines is the performance
Yeah.
metric.
The only thing they have in common is that they overwhelmingly favor CEOs, CEO pay.
Well, this is the thing. They've made them so attainable that CEOs usually like Muhlenberg. It will technically probably attain his bonus, right? Like in all likelihood.
Yeah, see, that's the question, and this is why I'm calling BS on this whole foregoing his bonus thing, because the company is probably going to suffer so much because of these crashes that I don't think anyone's getting their bonuses. So that he's giving it up, it might be kind of ridiculous.
So that's where it's confusing to me. Like I don't
Yeah,
know. Like this is where when it comes to compensation, I'm a bit of like a normal human.
yeah,
In which I just assume when you suck at your job, you don't get paid that much. Or
yeah.
that's what's
Or
supposed to
get
happen.
fired.
I don't think that that's true though. I think when they
No,
suck at their job, they don't get paid less unless they decide to say we're giving it up. Like Easterbrook at McDonald's is walking out with $40 million.
yeah. Despite being fired for a very specific thing that you're not allowed to do.
So it
But let
doesn't
me.
feel like an apology when you get $40 million to leave.
No, and let me get back quickly to the CEO pay issue because so this is a systemic problem, right? And the problem is that the CEOs rely on their bonuses essentially as guaranteed pay, and I'm guessing that they buy their mansions based on this idea of a bonus that, whereas you point out, the targets are very easy to attain. So this is part of the issue is that it's not based purely on performance.
It's so confusing to me.
Yeah,
Feels like it
it
should be
is.
easier.
A double tap there. Yeah, it should be easier, and this is what we aim to educate on here at Business Pants. We will talk about these issues of CEO pay, and we will try to make it intelligible.
Was that intelligible?
Yeah. All right, let's move on. Let's go to the big gig. The big gig is a new category where we cover our some of our favorite gig economy companies because
And gig adjacent.
there's a lot to say about them. So the top story is Airbnb, which we covered earlier in the week. So they have now vowed to conduct a comprehensive review of every property listed on its platform by December 15th, 2020, which is ridiculously specific. And I wonder, is it somebody's birthday on December 16th and they want to have some time to buy a bouncy house? I don't know what's going on.
You should check when their earnings dates are.
Okay, so the pledge comes less than a week after 5 people were killed at a party at a California Airbnb. And CEO Brian Chesky said, "We want to give peace of mind to our guests." Unfortunately, and this seems to be a pattern at our favorite app-based businesses, the CEO couldn't describe exactly how the verification would work.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps because it's such a massive undertaking, it's probably impossible. The CEO went on to say, quote, and I'm quoting here, "We have to take more responsibility for the stuff on our platform."
What do you think the chances are they go out and they buy Facebook data
To verify the properties?
to you and then use AI to figure out who is most like it's At what
Yeah, they're
point do
gonna.
we end up in Minority Report where we're all
They're gonna.
verified by some massive conglomerate?
They'll troll through the data and they'll like see like, well, this property smells like onions, so we can't verify it.
That sounds delicious.
What about this like years into their business enterprise, which covers the entire globe at this point? The CEO saying we have to take more responsibility for the stuff on our platform. What? And that's just so weak.
Which part? The responsibility part or the stuff
Yeah, right.
part?
Yeah, I think both. How about both? Um, all right, this one's for you, Matt. At Uber, right?
Oops.
This is what the Uber CEO had to say, and I'm gonna ask you. I'm gonna throw it over to you. This is what he had to say. We are very, very, very different from WeWork.
You dropped a triple very.
So Matt, are they? Are they very, very, very different than WeWork?
I think there's less kombucha involved, and I think
Okay.
they do use plastic and or are okay with meat.
You think they're smoking weed?
Well, it's hard to say who is. They might be nicer to pregnant ladies.
Might be,
Might be that one. That
but
one's
not to their so-called workers, who they refuse to call work.
they're non-worker workers.
Yeah.
I actually I did a really quick lookup because WeWork just posted. There was some stat about WeWork that was posted that 63, I think it was 63 or 69% of all co-working in the U.S. happens at WeWork co-working facilities.
Okay.
Which strikes me as a super high number, and it's why they're such a compelling economic story, right? Like
Mhm.
people who are co-working are basically doing it at WeWork, and that means there's a revenue opportunity there that's massive. There is a growth opportunity, and I was thinking, well, who co-works? Because 14%, I saw a survey that 14% of corporate workers actually co-work, which means that or 14% of co-working is corporate workers,
Yeah.
which means that
Included. Yeah. Yeah. Go
the
ahead.
rest of them are basically gig economy people who don't have offices.
Yeah.
So here's the link between Uber and Lyft and WeWork to me. They
Right.
rely
Right.
hugely on revenue
Hmm.
from revenue generators who are all gig economy workers who are all sort of idiosyncratic, working
With
for
nowhere to go.
them, around them, adjacent to them. I don't see how Uber is tremendously different from WeWork because they rely heavily on revenue from people who effectively are non-employees.
It's a good point, Matt. So maybe you're saying they're just well, okay. So how many very different are they? Very different? Are they different? Are they very very different? Are they not at all different? Where are you going? We got 4 seconds.
I land on 2/3 of a very. They're very different.
2/3 of a very. You heard it here at Business Pants. Um, all right, let's jump into our mailbag. We have another question from a listener. No harp. Okay, I guess I'm like waiting for the harp today, but
It's there.
okay,
It's low. It's low. It's low harpage.
a low harpage. All right, this comes from a person who is identifying himself as Kevin House. Okay,
K House.
notice how I preface it like that because I don't believe anybody on the internet. Sorry. Um, all right, so here it is. Here's the question, and I'm reading it verbatim. There's no embellishment here. Here it is. Ready? Yeah, not really looking for buy recommendations, just to know what kind of metrics are used and who are the leaders. And this is in reference to ESG. So get at it, Matt.
So this is a big if
Yeah, it is a big one.
This is a
ESG
big
metrics.
one. And I'm not going to be able to answer it all right now. There's actually a lot of media reports that talk about the disparity between ESG. Now, again, if you're new to this podcast or to ESG entirely, environmental social governance is like another set of data that people use to invest. It's usually lumped in with ethical. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. Google it for now.
Yeah, and we'll talk about it again.
We'll talk
So
about it
just
over and over.
Tune in again.
The fact is, there are a lot of media reports and conversation about how ESG ratings, data, metrics are all different depending on who you go to, which makes it difficult to say who a leader is. Here's my short
That's
answer.
true. Yeah.
Here's my short answer to that question. And I'll answer it in two ways. One, there is no fucking leader.
Oh,
It
okay.
only depends on what you want to do.
It's subjective. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that you have a portfolio or investing objective. Maybe you're petrified of risk. Maybe you think, oil is a terrible thing. Maybe you love solar panels and you sleep with them at night. Your investment objective is the one that determines the metrics that work. That's number one. Number two, to flip the question around, it's like asking which are the best value companies. You could go, or which are the best value metrics? You could look up 1,000,000. There are value investors who have dozens of different metrics that they use, and there is no one best. Now, with all that said,
yeah, all that dodging said, yes.
With all that said,
yeah,
there are vast differences between the providers. Like whenever you see ESG data, first of all, if a company is giving you the ESG data, don't believe a fucking word of it.
Okay.
It's really hard to know when the data, without having when a company says it, produces, one sniff of carbon, unless you know what every other company in that industry does and how to put it in context,
right?
It's really hard to know whether that's a true number because most of the numbers that the company give you are entirely voluntary.
Sure.
And that means when you see data from a data provider, you really have to know what they care about to figure out what's best and what makes sense for you.
Matt, this is really confusing to me.
Well, it's really confusing space. It's like saying, what data should I care about when I'm investing? I don't know. All of it. None of it.
Kevin, to you, Kevin, I say, first of all, I say hello, Kevin. But second of all, I say, we're going to get back at this because I think there's a good conversation to be had here. Because I think Matt is just starting the conversation, and I only gave him 3 minutes, so it's partly my fault. But
well, I really also want to say to Kevin, it's an excellent, excellent question. You're asking the same question that literally massive multi-trillion-dollar institutions are asking right now.
All right, you don't have to kiss Kevin's ass.
He's asking the same. I've answered this question for portfolio managers, institutions. It's a real question that gets asked everywhere.
We're going to get back to this because
let's get at it.
I think what this show needs is sort of an ongoing conversation about this, which I know some of the ESG providers can be a little uncomfortable about because they get defensive, but we don't have to be defensive because we're free float media. All right, let's move on. Let's get out of here. Get out of the mailbag. Close the mailbag. Okay, that harp killing me.
I turned it up now for you.
Yeah, thanks. Like a dying cat. Biz Nuggets time. Everybody's favorite Biz Nuggets, the quick and dirty. That's what Matt likes to call them.
Ew.
Today in our Biz Nuggets, we've got some good ones. The first one I'm a big fan of. So millennials are cheering a 25-year-old New Zealand lawmaker who said, "Okay, boomer," in response to an older colleague in Parliament when heckled about her support for the zero carbon bill, which would set a target of zero carbon emissions for the country by 2050. So, yeah, I think we're gonna adopt that here on the show somehow. Okay, boomer, I love it.
The fact is, it has that phrase has to exist because
right? I think this might be the answer to turning around like the climate crisis. I think this could do it. No, I do.
I'm hoping it's a meme that goes viral.
It's a Me Too moment. I believe it. I believe it.
Well, let's not get carried away.
No, I am getting carried away because I'm drinking really old, cold, dank coffee, and it's making me a little jittery. So I'm going with it. Number two, second biz nugget. Facebook discloses that as many as 100 software developers may have improperly accessed user data. So, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Also, an NBC News report is showing how Facebook found ways to tap users' data as leverage over the companies it partnered with. So, in some cases, Facebook would reward partners by giving them preferential access to certain types of user data while denying the same access to rival companies. So, there you go, Matt. Facebook's up to some fun.
When you are the monopoly of social media, you pretty much can do what you want. I think we've hit that. That's
Zuck's world.
We're all just, it's his world. We just live in it.
Yeah, and we shouldn't really be worrying about it because the new logo is all capital letters, and it should make you feel like Daddy is taking care of you, right? Isn't that what all capital letters means? Daddy's home.
Is that what it means?
Okay, our third biz nugget. People are turning to Dr. Google for help on medical diagnoses, even for STDs. Researchers have found a dramatic spike in what's being called crowd diagnosis. In a nutshell, people may feel more comfortable reaching out to strangers through a screen rather than an in-person visit. So, if any of our listeners figure out how to monetize this, you owe us 2% of ownership and 51% of the voting rights.
But this is
why going to be this is important business here.
Just to bring it back to other news from late last week. This is why that Fitbit acquisition matters so much.
Yeah.
Because Google realizes that people would rather passively transmit your data to a massive corporation and then ask that massive corporation passively, what do I do about my goiter?
We'll take that question offline, Matt.
Do not send that as a mailbag question, by the way.
Yeah, Kevin, relax. Next. Adam Newman's fail up bank robbery at WeWork may be forcing SoftBank to adopt tougher governance standards as the Japanese group aims to reduce the outsized control of startup founders. Under consideration are restrictions on dual class share structures, board seats, and voting rights. So, and I said this before, Adam Newman's stink may have some healing properties here. Maybe healing the governance world, right?
Well, let's not get carried away because there's a good chance that they reduce dual class voting from 10x to 5x.
Okay, well, it's a reduction.
So,
yeah.
All things in context.
We talked about this here, but is there a real possibility for reform in this area because of this debacle? I mean, do you think, or am I being
I think
way too optimistic?
No, I do. I actually do think it's the end of a particular era of governance. I mean, there's been this massive rise in dual class shares. There's been mostly people who are ignored it, with some exception. I think now we've hit the end of it. We've hit the end of that road.
Oh, listen, Matt Moscardi.
Yeah, that's my prediction. That's my hot take.
I like it. I like it. Finally, our last nugget of the week, to put a bow on our whiny billionaires, right? Jamie Dimon says this about Senator Elizabeth Warren. And this is a quote. She uses some pretty harsh words, Some would say she vilifies successful people. And when he says some would say, he means whiny, rich, white male billionaires. He went on to say, again, I quote, "I don't like vilifying anybody. I think we should applaud successful people." So here you go, Jamie. I'm going to applaud your successful, tone-deaf whining. Congratulations.
He's not alone, though, because Bill Gates actually was complaining about Elizabeth Warren, too.
Yeah, well, she's coming. She's coming for the bag.
Do you think it's is it a good sign when everybody complains? All billionaires seem to complain about one person.
Yeah, it means they're worried about her potential power. I guess it's a good side it's a good sign in the primary election, I suppose.
That was
All right.
lovely.
Really trying to keep to the time here, to the schedule. Let's go to Matt Makes. What have you made today? What are you gonna make today, Matt?
Matt Makes buddies.
Oh, really? Okay. All right.
So I wanted to follow up on. We've talked a lot about Boeing. We've talked a lot about McDonald's, and you brought up a point earlier this week about Muhlenberg, Boeing CEO, and how he hasn't gotten fired, and the number of CEOs on the board with him at Boeing as part of the reason why he's insulated. So I actually wanted to take this to a crazier degree.
All right.
To understand the potential implications here. So here's what I did. And I had to write this down on real paper. You hear that, people? That's real paper.
Yeah.
So Muhlenberg sits on the chair, sits on the Boeing board. He was the chair until basically last week when he was axed. The board has 14 people on it right now. These 14 people, they meet 7 times a year as a group, and then they have a number of committee meetings. So they spend, I mean, what do you spend? A couple hours talking when you're at a board meeting, right? So they spend a good amount of time together.
There's more than that. I mean, there's a lunch coming from Panera. You know, there's coffee from Luckin Coffee. You know, there's more than a few hours.
It's a good point. Yeah. So you're talking about probably hours and hours of time that these people spend together and know each other pretty well. Now, we're going to get to know each other a little bit better because 2 of the Boeing board members, Dave Calhoun, who's now the new chair of the board, and Susan Schwab, and Calhoun, they both sit on the Caterpillar board, where Muhlenberg also sits on that board. So Muhlenberg, Calhoun, Schwab, all on the Caterpillar board together, and on the Boeing board together, where Muhlenberg is CEO. All right,
and they've been in the Caterpillar board for at least 8 years, I believe.
8 years together for the most part. Calhoun and Muhlenberg for 8 years together. Schwab, I'm not sure. Now, Calhoun and Schwab happen to also both sit on the nomination committee for both Boeing and Caterpillar, which means Calhoun and Schwab are 2 people who choose board members at both of those companies.
Yeah.
They also, Calhoun and Schwab, sit on the pay committee at Boeing, determining Muhlenberg's pay. So
there's a lot of extra cuddling time too. A lot of get to know you.
This is what I'm saying, right? You got these 2 people who basically sit on the boards with Muhlenberg in 2 different places. They spend a lot of time getting bad coffee delivered to them in conference rooms, talking about important things that people talk about, and they determine those 2 people actually determine his pay. Now, I'm going to get a little bit confusing here. Okay?
Yeah, I'll do it.
Prepare yourself. Now, strap in, because Muhlenberg doesn't just sit on the Boeing board. He sits on lots of boards, right? Like,
lots of boards. Okay.
And Boeing board members sit on lots of boards as well. So I actually looked at the Boeing board members who sit on non-corporate boards with Muhlenberg.
Okay.
So one in particular pops out, Lynn Good. She's the CEO of Lockheed Martin. She sits on the Business Roundtable board with Muhlenberg. Also happens to sit on it with Jamie Dimon. So shout out to Crying Billionaires sitting on the same board together. Lynn Good is also not just on the Boeing board and the Business Roundtable with Muhlenberg, but she also sits on the pay committee. So right now, what we have, the pay committee at Boeing has 6 members on it. 3 of them sit on other boards with Muhlenberg. So fully 50% of the people who choose Muhlenberg's pay sit with Muhlenberg on other boards, having Panera every 7 times a year.
Some tasty cronyism there, Matt.
I'm not even close to done. Let's up the ante.
Keep going.
All right, we're going to up the ante here, because what I realized is 2 of Caterpillar's board members, William Osborne and Miles White. Osborne and White. Now keep those names in mind. They actually
Osborne's
sit
white.
on other boards with Muhlenberg too. White sits on the board of the U.S.-China Business Council with Muhlenberg, and Osborne is even more complicated because he sits on the board. Okay, ready?
Yeah.
Osborne sits on the board
Born
of
ready.
Abbott Laboratories
Okay.
with Edward Liddy, who sits on the
Yep.
board of Boeing. And Muhlenberg sits on the Caterpillar board with Osborne.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, we're just drawing circles. These people all sit on boards with each other.
Yeah.
Now I want to totally blow your mind
Yeah. Do it.
because I haven't done it yet. I actually got all the people on boards that Boeing board members sit on. So basically, you're a Boeing board member, you sit on other boards. I got all the people on those boards. I got all the people on the Caterpillar board, and I got all the people on other boards just in Dennis Muhlenberg's bio. I don't know. He maybe sits on the board of his, preschool with, Leon Cooperman's, wife or something. I don't know that. I do know all the other boards that he sits on that are in his bio. There are 417 people that I could link to Muhlenberg through boards.
Okay.
Muhlenberg actually sits on boards with 137 people on his own, just by himself. So there's a lot of people. Now, there are 10 people on the boards with Muhlenberg who also sit on boards with other Boeing board members.
All right. Keep going. Keep going.
One in particular stands out.
Yeah.
Phoebe Novakovic.
Okay.
Phoebe Novakovic is the CEO of General Dynamics, a rare woman CEO. So I don't like to have to say this about Phoebe.
Yeah.
But Phoebe sits on the board of Abbott Laboratories with Osborne, who I mentioned. But she also sits on the Aerospace Industries Association and the Medal of Honor Foundation, both of which Muhlenberg sit on. So Phoebe Novakovic on multiple boards with multiple contact to Muhlenberg. And if you're confused, it's because this is all totally nuts. And there's an upshot here.
Yeah.
Because all these people very clearly sit in a pool of board members, right? Like they all just sit in this big pool of people that are like, oh, you're all board members. All these people are tagged as board worthy. They're probably chummy with each other. They handshake a lot. I don't know. Maybe they have secret handshakes.
Sure.
But what they all actually tend to be, now Muhlenberg looks like there's a lot of women involved, more so than usual, but what they all tend to be is very much the same. And what I mean by that is I pulled gender data on every single one of them, and I actually used U.S. population data to guess at race based on their first names. Now, so take this with a pinch of salt, right? Because, black people named John are going to look like white people because most people named John are white. And on boards, it's even more pronounced. But here's what I get when I look at Muhlenberg's boards. The overwhelming majority, nearly 90% of people that Muhlenberg sits on boards with are white people. Okay?
Yeah.
They're
Not a shock.
They're most, and this is the estimate, they're mostly white people.
Yeah.
There are 5 or 6% rather of people whose names couldn't be identified in any one particular race. So it could be even more than that. Now let me ask you something.
Yeah.
If you're looking to de-chummify a board, one place to start might be someone who looks moderately different from everybody else. Try hiring somebody new.
So it diversifies what you're saying.
This is the ultimate case that Dennis Muhlenberg is still sitting as CEO of Boeing after what's happened is the ultimate case for diversity on boards because he sits on multiple boards with multiple people who they're all relatively chummy and they're all almost entirely white.
He's like surrounded by like pink, fleshy fiberglass insulation, right? Just insulating him from the pitchfork the masses coming for his job.
We're talking about over
is that what you're saying?
500 people that I looked at, 90% of whom are white people.
All right.
It's crazy to me.
I like it, Matt. We've gone a little long, but I had this to say, beyond the beautiful, points you just pointed out, is that Dennis is spending way too much time on outside boards. It sounds like, right? I mean, no, really. I mean, this. I don't know how this is not also an issue. Is that why the hell does he spend so much time on so many boards?
It's a lot.
We know from his. He doesn't need to be doing all this. He doesn't need the extra money. I mean, there were two fatal. All right, okay. Well, we beat the dead horse.
This has been
sorry
a
to go over.
sloppy
Yeah.
business pants.
This is a week. This is the week business pants. We will see you on Monday. Why don't you tell everybody to subscribe, Matt? Tell them
Subscribe, rate us, let us know what you think. Come back at us.
You ask us a question, we will answer it.
That's what we do here.
What we do. All right, see you later, Matt.
we answer questions that almost no one wants to know the answer to. Congratulations. Have a good week, Damien. I'll talk to you next week.